Hi everyone.
Hello, sorry we had some issues with Wi-Fi here. Apologies.
We're now tethered to Bruce's phone's 4G, so he's going to get a nasty phone bill, but it's worth it to carry on talking to you about
the things we do for you guys. So I think I was talking about Harmonic Changes, so for those of you who just need to brush up on that, notes such as a B flat can be an A sharp, and composers don't always write the nicest sort of melodies that look nice. They can often be quite tricky to get your head around until it makes sense. So just look out for those moments.
And that's true. And also talking about enharmony, i.e. the same notes meaning different things sonically. Something that I do a lot in music preparation, I think we all do, is within a chord, your note as written can stay the same, but the harmony around you can shift. So I could be singing a G at the top of a G major chord, just to get quite geeky for a minute. G, B, D, G, and I stay on that G at the top. And it could be that I hold that while everyone underneath me changes to an E flat major chord. Suddenly I change from being the root of the chord, the tonic, to being the third. And it's good to be aware of these things. When you're preparing your music, note that's happening in the music. Do a little bit of theory to see that that's happening.
Yeah.
And then you can be prepared in the rehearsal that as that chord changes beneath you, you've got to listen out and see if your note needs to be adjusted. It's really fine-tuning and it's difficult. I still find it very hard. But you've got to listen out and work out, is that same note that I'm singing relevant, even though we are talking a different chord underneath you? So these are the sorts of things you can look at with enharmonic changes in a score.
And if that is feeling like it's a little bit too difficult, then let's just jump back a step and say, look, how do I get my note to start a phrase? Look around you for signposts, as if you're in a foreign country looking for street signs or for landmarks. You know, what's a landmark in the score that can help you get your note, and circle it. We do some pieces by a wonderful composer called Judge Ligeti, and it's some of the most complex music I think I've ever sung in my entire life. And you are constantly having to be aware of what's happening around you, because it's so challenging. Often we're in 6 different keys, it almost feels like, and in fact there isn't really a key signature. It's more just a key, a tonal center perhaps, or something crazy. Anyway, so find notes in other parts that relate to yours, and then you can, when they sing them, remember them, and then you know where to start your note. So that's a useful thing, and that's something that we certainly have to do.
And if you going back to something I said in the earlier section or previous video, sadly, if you're listening to a recording and you're sort of humming along maybe, and you think, oh my word, how do they get that note? That's a really tricky interval to come in on. Look at the score carefully, work out where can I find that note previously. I would recommend circling it with pencil and hold it in your head. These are little tricks you can do, but the crucial thing we want to drive home today is that by doing this, you just turn up to the rehearsal that 10% more ready to put polish on the performance, which is so much more exciting as a process.
Yeah.
So use your pencil as your friend. Let it give you guides to these signposts Bruce is talking about, to ways you can help yourself.
Eugene, I've still got to work on a technique for getting around the Lavery block, so sorry, that's just a wee in-joke here between me and Eugene. Anyway,
Eugene.
What about looking up and down the score? So you've already mentioned where does my note fit within a chord, but also what else is going on? Am I an important part? Am I the melody? Am I harmony? Am I an important counter melody? Am I, what else could we say? Am I
Bottom of the texture.
Am I bottom of the texture? Am I top of the texture? So we inherently think of the bass part as being the thing at the lowest part of the texture. But what happens if all of a sudden the tenors sing the lowest note within the texture? All of a sudden they have to change from being a middle part, potentially, to being a bass function. So they're not the bass part, but a bass function, and they need to sing differently, as if they were on top of the texture or in the middle of the texture. So look out for those moments.
Conversely, for the basses at that point, you realise, you look out in your score when you're preparing, you realise, okay, here on this chord, I'm above the tenors. And that should mean something to you. That should speak to you and say, okay, I need to sing slightly differently from when I'm the foundation to the sound. and you know, these are all useful things to look out for before you get to the rehearsal.
Now, if you do happen to have a long phrase, it's worth giving yourself a heads up. All sorts of things can happen in a performance, and the score is meant to give you more information rather than less information, or fewer information, or whatever the phrase is. Anyway,
Less is okay.
Less is okay, cool. I know my colleagues are always on my back about proper English usage. Anyway, and so give yourself a heads up. It could be on a page turn or something. Just go, uh-oh, long phrase ahead. Write something to say to yourself, tank up, get a big breath.
A bit of context, when when you join the King Singers, you inherit the scores of your predecessor, and you know the same scores have been in the library since the group started, and it's always interesting to see different markings that people make, our predecessors.
Yes.
And what I really like is something that David did in lots of scores, which is if you've got a big phrase coming up, he puts a big tick. Tick's quite a common sign to say take a breath. Then he puts like another little tick within the big tick, sort of like they're sort of spooning 2 ticks. And I've started to learn just from using David's scores. That means, okay, take a big tank up here because it's going to be a long phrase. And so, yeah, I think another thing to say is to find your own shorthand to use in scores. Come up with a system, even just gradually, of symbols and systems that you can write into your score, which mean things to you. And I think when you get to the sort of professional level, everyone has their own way of marking up a score, and it becomes like reading another language. You don't even need to sort of think about what it means. You see this symbol, this squiggle, and you know, okay, that's what I need to do.
But how about for people that aren't at a professional level? How can we relate to those people? So, for example, I use a tick for a breath and a big tick or 2 ticks for a big breath. You might do something different. I use, if I want to cut off, I mark a line. That's a cut-off, and that tells me is a certain type of cut-off. Now, if you want to be really accurate and say we want to take a quaver off or an 8th note off, then we draw that sign. I also want to know, what if I need to cut off or come in with another part? I'll mark that line, and I might split the line and rejoin it in my part. You know, just all sorts of things to help me. So I use ticks. I might use a comma if it's a sort of gathering moment rather than a breath, but more just take some time and then the next, you know, so the piece doesn't just go on in time. So commas, ticks,
another one that we use quite a lot is for when you need to stop the sound but not necessarily take a whole big breath. So the phrase has to continue, but there's a little tiny sort of glimmer of air in the sound, and we use a slur with a line through it. Well, certainly I do.
Yeah.
That's quite a useful little tool to say that you're carrying the intention of the phrase on, but a tiny little lift in the sound.
So, for example, if we were singing the English national anthem or the British national anthem, God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble. So it's a sort of acknowledgement that there's a gap, but not a stopping of the line. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah. You answer. Can I just say, Jerry Wang has written in, say, how do you handle the moment when your brain just goes blank and forgets the lyrics?
It's quite an appropriate one for me, actually.
I think this is Bruce's territory all over, so I'll sit back and sip for a while.
It has been known that this has happened to me. Jerry, I feel your pain. It is one of the most terrifying things when you're looking out at the audience and they're looking at you, and then all of a sudden it's just black. It's just... There are a few ways that you can get around this. One is more creative than another. I'd say that the best thing is to remain calm, because if your brain at that point in time goes, oh my gosh, what's happening? All you can think of is that. Remain calm. Or get creative. Make something up. Make something believable up. And I've
We're looking at Julian over here,
we've heard some creative things on stage,
creative before.
and I've heard some things that other artists have done too, and admired greatly the skill that they have in a split second to make something up that's completely believable. I have an admission to make. I once had to sing 3 verses of Greensleeves, not quite as the Henry VIII intended them, but I hope only the 5 colleagues on stage heard it. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, but there was the eternal line, because you are the one, and whenever that piece came up, my colleagues gave me a lot of grief and said, because you are the one. So look, that's my admission.
But I think you know, for me, I've had moments. I don't know what Jerry, you know, what experience you're talking about, but for me, often you can rely on your brain more than you think. And even in my own sort of 6 months in the group, there have been moments where I think it's 10 seconds time until a new verse starts, and I can't for the life of me remember what the first word is, because often when you get the first word, it all comes from it.
Yeah.
But weirdly, in the moment, the chord gets there, you think, oh my god, and then your brain just goes and does it for you.
Yeah.
And that's a terrifying few seconds. But sometimes, I mean, it's not good to be on autopilot during a show, but sometimes you can be grateful for what your brain stores away without even realising it.
And therefore, it comes back to the first point: remain calm. Remain calm, because it's amazing what's in there. You've just got to just allow the brain to happen, and you know. But yeah, so that's and I guess preparation. The more you prepare, the fewer times this is likely to happen. So
that's good.
All comes back to preparing the score and having a good basis from which to learn pieces of music.
Mm-hmm. And just I think to drive it back home to what we said at the very start, this is all stuff that you can really get sort of under your belt before you get to a rehearsal, so that you get the most out of your director. So many amazing choral directors out there, and it would be a waste of their time if you turned up and all they did was play the notes on the piano. So if you can do all this work using your resources, you'll just get so much more out of your choral experience, no matter what level you're at. We've got something from Jules, who's monitoring questions.
A question which is particularly poignant for me. Do you find the need to tweak the major third slightly higher so it rings better?
Do we find the need to tweak the major thirds slightly higher? So I mean, this comes. I'd say there's two elements to this. One is that's personal taste. I think tunes can be in tune or they can't be in tune, but within that, there are certain flavours of in tune that some people prefer to others. So I personally like low major thirds in early music. Some people prefer bright major thirds in early music. I think when it comes to more jazz-like harmony, the brighter the third, I think the more helpful it can be, particularly when there are added notes, sixths, ninths, sevenths, all sorts of extra added notes. But with early music, I think it can be a personal taste.
I think there's a very good book on this, and I'm not being paid by him to say it. A man called Ross Duffin wrote a very nice little handy guide. Somehow it ended up being stocked in a very popular British bookstore. I don't know how it ended up there, but it's called How Equal Temperament Ruined Harmony, in brackets, and Why You Should Care. It's a really neat little handbook which takes you through the very basics of how tuning works and you know, why certain intervals need to be wider, in what contexts. That's a handy guide if you really want to get into detail, which we don't have enough time for now.
That's pretty geeky.
It's very geeky, and I'm here to provide the geek chic to this this live recording.
That's our boy. Okay, so...
But thank you, Phil, for that question. That's a lovely, lovely question.
It's a lovely question. We, going down our list of things, in early music, in particular with polyphony, it's really important that you understand where the important phrase needs to be. And this is in every music, but particularly here. What tends to happen is that one voice part will start a new part of the text, and then the other voice parts follow. And sometimes it's the same order, sometimes it changes. Sometimes they happen in canon or in all sorts of different things. But the first person that has the new text, it's critical that we hear that. So give them room to make sure that text comes through clearly, and then get out the way and let other people take over.
And in the context of working on your score, just note where these things are. And this is particularly, as Bruce said, this is very much the case in imitative polyphonic music from the Renaissance and the Baroque, is that someone will state a tune and someone else will have it. I always, just as a reminder, if I have the text first, I always just draw a little diminuendo sign to remind myself that when Bruce's part comes in and has the text, I'm no longer so important. So these are really handy little things that you can do to make sure that the audience's ear is drawn to the right part at any one time.
And this is something you can do before the rehearsal. You can go through the score, you can see where the text repeats and where the new text begins, and that's something that you can bring to the rehearsal so the conductor doesn't need to spoon feed that. Okay?
It's all useful.
New question.
In terms of vocal technique, what is a tip for non-professional singers to use as a reminder to keep your instrument relaxed during a long song that is demanding?
Oh, that's good. I mean,
Okay,
there's lots of different things, isn't there?
in terms of vocal technique, what are some good tips to remind amateur singers to keep relaxed, especially during a long song
Larynx.
that is
Yeah.
particularly demanding? So what they're really talking about is this vocal mechanism up here, keeping a low larynx position. Now, some of these words are going to go over your head, some of them won't, but essentially these are all parts of the vocal mechanism that allow us to sing more comfortably if they are in the right position.
A neutral position.
A neutral position.
Your larynx will always move while you're singing. It's part of the vibration of the vocal cords. It's going to move. But I think what our questioner here is saying is that if you're in a particularly demanding piece, if you get tense, sometimes your larynx can ride higher than where it wants to be, and it gets uncomfortable and difficult to sing.
Well, it stops the vocal mechanism moving and those chords being able to stretch. And as the chords stretch, the voice gets higher. As they come back together, the voice gets lower. So if we restrict that movement, that free movement, the voice makes it very difficult to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing you could do in your score is just write constant reminders every page, every second page. Say, right, keep relaxed. I write that in my score. Relax.
Yeah. For me, what sort of tips are there? I mean, a good thing is if you're talking about it within the context of a concert, I think it's good in the down moments when you're receiving applause between pieces. Just sort of rethink about your stance. It's easy to sort of come forward and let your shoulders ride high during a piece, and it's crucial just while they're applauding, you just think, oh, okay, I can come back a bit and relax it and
Breathe
get your
out.
posture back to where it is. Another thing that I find helpful, if the larynx isn't where you want it to be, is if you got the chance, gulp. Just doing that, it just resets it, gets it back to a normal place. So that's a really handy thing, I think.
Yeah.
I hope
But
that answers.
Use
to a
the
certain
score to give you information. The last thing you often think about doing when you're performing is thinking about technical things. Hopefully they're in a good place that they just happen, freely and without thinking. But sometimes we just have to, write things to remind us to reset. Okay, so
Yeah.
use the score to help you.
Use it.
Okay.
Use it. So we've basically covered, in our list of things which we talked about earlier, we've now covered what we called the sort of first principles, the foundation of things that we think you should do during preparation. And we'd love to talk now in next level of detail about some really sort of specific stuff that can mark you out from your neighbour choral singer as
Is this preparing your score properly 102?
This is what, yeah, we've done 101. Now you guys have made it through the tough selection round into 102.
Congratulations.
Some really detailed stuff, so it gives me a chance to geek out some more.
Oh, good. Okay, so the first thing I would do is mark fifths and octaves. I would find moments where my individual note is the same as another part, so that's an octave. That gives me a direct link to someone else singing the same part. I will mark it with a bracket, or however, or circle them both and put a line between them. But immediately I know who I need to listen to at any one moment in time.
So many things are about listening. It's such a massive part of what we do is the listening. So yeah, as Bruce said, mark your octaves with someone else. Just go through and find some really still chords and think, okay, so in that point I need to be in perfect octaves with, say, Johnny, which I have quite a lot. And if you ring them, it will remind you as you sing the piece to listen out to, as Bruce said, to listen out to what he's singing.
It's signposts. It's like travelling in a foreign city. It's looking for signposts. Your score gives you the ability to do all the thinking for you, so you don't have to remember all these things. You can see instantly, listen to the bass. And your listening will be so much faster than your brain at trying to remember all these things.
Absolutely.
Help yourself out by marking the score.
Another thing to watch out for, we talked a bit about this before, but we can talk in some more detail now, is part crossing and tessitura. So
what is tessitura?
Tessitura is the relative placement of a note or a phrase within your vocal capacity. So my sort of range normally within a concert is a middle C to a top G, and within that the higher tessitura stuff could be that top fifth from C to G, and the lower tessitura stuff could be around the middle C. So it's where your part lies within your vocal range. And I think certainly when marking up our scores, we take care to work out where we are in our tessitura. Generally speaking, if you're higher up in your tessitura, the sound is going to be louder, it's going to travel more easily. So when you're lower down, you often have to feed it with more air and really sort of work slightly harder to make sure that you balance within a chord, because we're always aiming for, at least most of the time, a really nicely balanced choral texture. So you can really help yourself by marking out the places where everyone else is singing really high note, and within your range you're low. You need to give more, they need to give less.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the first things I do when I see a piece of music is I just do a complete scan, and I just look at my part and I see, yep, okay, cool. There's a top F. Okay, that's gonna need a different technique than something in the middle of my range, and just in the same way that Pat did. Actually, there was a previous countertenor in the group used to mark in all the top notes, and right at the start of the score, I've got 10 Fs.
He did it in what do you call those sort of bar gate things? He drew little lines to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes,
exactly. A tally chart. To sort of work out how many high notes he's got coming
and then
up.
he crossed them off. I've done the ninth D. I've got one more to go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I wouldn't recommend. That might not be a useful thing for everyone to do.
It might worry you a bit. Question from Julian.
Are there benefits to sitting during rehearsal or standing?
Oh, sure. Are there benefits to sitting or standing during rehearsal? Well, it's personal preference. Personally, I think there is a good technique for sitting and a good technique for standing. So I would encourage you, if you feel that it's worth just having a rest and sitting down, I think it's always important to sit towards the front of the chair, so my back wouldn't be at the back of my chair, because that would just encourage me to slouch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd sit at the front.
Buttocks should be very close to the rim of the chair.
I would try and keep sort of right angles with how I'm sitting and where my legs are, and I'd have a nice relaxed, elevated posture, and that would give me a good place for sort of singing from, a good mechanism. Basically, I want to be as comfortable and as relaxed as if I was standing, because standing and slouching is not really any better than sitting and slouching. So it's completely up to you guys. And if you've got room for everyone to sit, or desks for everyone to sit at, sometimes we do use a desk, don't we?
We do. Yeah.
And sometimes
I think for choral directors out there who are watching, what I used to really enjoy as a singer working for conductors is a mixture. So working on some stuff in detail, sitting down, obviously sit with good posture, keep everything free and in the right place. Then a really nice technique, rehearsal-wise, I found, was you say, okay, now let's stand up and sort of put this all into context, and you can sort of click into performance mode, and that's a really nice rehearsal method.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Good question.
Good question.
So what about language?
Language, yeah.
What if it's a language that you've never sung before, and you're thinking, well, it's all very well to prepare my score, but I have no idea how to speak Russian. How do I go about that?
It's tricky. This goes back to what we said earlier on resources. In this day and age, we have so many resources to help us get over these problems. And singing Russian, maybe some of you have sung Rachmaninoff Vespers, one of my favourite pieces, beautiful. And I think for a lot of choral singers, that's the only time they sing Russian, but it's a good time. And the score may give you certain amounts of help. You know, for example, the score I always used to use of the Rachmaninoff Vespers has a transliteration. So Rachmaninoff wrote in Old Church Slavonic, the Cyrillic text, which is a sort of set of symbols which personally I don't understand. But then editors can sometimes give you a transliteration, so a sort of a anglicised version of the old script. So sometimes you have help in the score already in the form of a transliteration. Sometimes you might need to go to Mr. Google Translate.
Now, I know for people that aren't big fans of Google Translate, all I would say is it's a better starting point than nothing. Now, it's not the be-all and end-all. Some languages and some translations are excellent and some are not so good. But not having any idea can't be a better starting place. So at least go, and generally what I would say is, once you've had a funny translation from Google Translate, you can then hopefully in your own language and your own ability look at it and go, oh, okay, that's what they're kind of trying to get. So even just knowing that it's a love song, even just knowing that it's from the perspective of someone trying to woo someone else, or you're describing a beautiful pastoral scene, just even a bit of context means that you don't go in and just sing black dots with funny symbols and pronunciation things, you know. So give yourself a heads up, but it's it's a guide rather than an exact science.
Right, and then the more you manage to do that, and you work out what individual words mean. For me, I'm not an amazing linguist. I'm no Johnny with sort of 7 languages on my belt, but I've sung enough and I've looked enough words up in preparing music that I now know certain key words in certain languages.
Yeah.
For example, an easy one is in German. Gott is obviously God.
God, yeah.
Vater is father, and amor in Italian is or amore.
A love, yeah,
It's love.
And exactly.
And you build up a bank of things, and you see it in the score. And even if you haven't taken the time to translate the whole poem, you see, okay, I can sort of get something from that,
exactly.
and that's going to help you before you start singing it.
Question.
Any tips for singing and holding a dissonant note in a chord?
Any tips for singing and holding a dissonant note in the chord? Well, good question. Well, I would say understand who you are being dissonant with, and work on being confident with that dissonance so that it has a beauty about it. I think some people think dissonance is not beautiful, but actually one of the most amazing things about dissonance is knowing that if it resolves, it's one of the most lovely moments in a piece. It adds real colour to the piece. So be confident with where you are and hear what that sounds like when it's in dissonance, and so that you're not afraid to go there straight away.
Yeah, that's true. I'd also say, what was I going to say? Lord, I've already forgotten. Know what the role of your dissonant note is within the chord. For example, if you're singing a 7th, if you've got a C major chord underneath you, and you are the B flat on top, for example, know that your dissonance is with the C, and that your note is the flavour. So something that is often unsettling when you listen to dissonant chords is if they're not balanced correctly. So for me, if the added note chords outside of the normal triad, if you've got C, E, G as your C major triad, if the B flat is too prominent, it destabilises the chord. So I think you're going to help yourself in singing this dissonant note if you can hear around you that the C major chord is the root, the basis, and you're the flavour, and you balance to the triad that you're already hearing underneath you. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you'd like a good example of this, check out Lotti's Crucifixus, okay? It's a wonderful introduction.
At 8, he wrote about 25 of them.
It did, yeah. So it's an 8-part piece, the version that we'd like you to listen to, okay? And it's a beautiful introduction to dissonance. And you'll hear the wonderful sort of tension that brings. And so, yeah, I would urge you to listen to that.
I've just spotted a very good question, which maybe I'll just go for it. Ashlyn Frederick, I think someone we've met in Italy. Yeah, she's a friend of ours. Hello, Ashlyn. She's asked for tips for coming back in after staggered breathing without being noticed. We've just been working with the University of Johannesburg Choir, and we touched on this with them. One of the crucial things about sneaky staggering, which is something that we have to do a lot because we have so few people, that we have to do a lot of very quick and subtle breathing, which people hopefully don't notice too often. I'd say the crucial thing is don't let the consonants give you away. If you are singing, what's a good example of the word? If you're singing the word words, for example, my words are spoken. Let's say that's the sentence for whatever reason. If you need to breathe for the word spoken, and that's your sneaky tick place, don't put the z sound at the end of words.
Yeah.
My words are spoken.
Exactly. So, it's really obvious when someone goes, my words are...
Because that S will crack through the texture, and everyone who is going to, well, she's cheating.
So, yeah, exactly. So if you need to stop the line, then just subtly fade out, avoid the end consonant, and then subtly come back in, so it's seamless. All right?
That's a good question. We like
Very
that.
good question.
And going back to what we're talking about today, preparing scores, that's something you can mark in to help yourself. If you know you're going to stagger, just I often do this, cross off the DS.
Well, also, mark in, have a chat to the person sitting next to you, if that's the same person all the time, and talk about it and say, right, I'm going to breathe here. So I will make a note of where I'm staggering and where my colleague is staggering, so I know I don't breathe with them. So it's something that we actually prepare and we formalise. It's not just a let's hope that they remember that I'm breathing here and I'm not, you know. So mark it in, so that you don't have to remember that. It just happens.
And following on from this point, we've got a question from one of my favourite names so far, Mars. For a bigger group like a 30-member choir, I can count on another alto to catch me if I can't hold a note. Lucky you. But for a small group like King's singers, how do you go about it? What exercise do you do to improve breathing?
Well, it's amazing. If you do some breathing exercises, one example is one where you take in a breath and then you release, you expel the air to, and you try and make a very sustained sound. There's no bubbles. It's just a very consistent sound. You can go for well over a minute with practice. I don't know many songs where I've had to hold my breath for a whole minute. So I know that that's definitely within the realms of my capability. And another one I would suggest is called effing the text, where you sing your phrase to, and you judge how much time you need to get to the end of the phrase. And so that's just about voice management. So practice knowing how much air you need for every phrase. You don't need to fill up for every phrase. Some phrases are short, so don't take a massive phrase, because you can't breathe again until you've released the air that's remaining.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
You trade individuality for an amazingly homogeneous sound. Do you ever miss being able to truly go your own way?
Wow.
Interesting question.
We're slightly going off piece, but it's actually a question that I'd like to answer.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. I'm in a crucial stage of working my own sound into the King Singer sound, and it's slightly easier for me. I'm on top. I'm sort of, people have said the top part is the gateway into the group sound. So it's it's an interesting one, and I'm having to work out which bits of individuality from my voice I can pull back so that the group sound works, and which bits are actually really useful. And quite a common thing I think in joining the King Singers is in knowing that you've got to get rid of some of the natural colour. You can sometimes go too far, and it doesn't, you don't really grit into the group sound. So it's a tricky one. But I'd say in what we do, it's a real treat when you get solos. Brew and I, in this programme we're doing tomorrow in Johannesburg, we're doing a piece called She's Like the Swallow, a beautiful North American folk song, and we both get a crack at this lovely, lovely lyrical solo line, just a beautiful, plain sort of statement of the folk song. And they are moments that we can really let out, be fully expressive, and you can trust your colleagues to go with what you want to do. That's moments you can let vibrato come out if you want to, you can colour the words, take time when you want to, and you don't have to worry about this sort of homogeneous blend so much.
Well, I think it's it's one step further than that, in that we've decided that that's what we want to do as a group. That's our USP, if you like. That if we all sang for ourselves and brought our vocal egos on stage, I don't think we'd be the King Singers, and I think we might sound like many ensembles. And I think there's something special about the fact that we are 6 singers who try and create one instrument, and we know that's maybe not to some people's tastes, but it's something that we find enormous joy in, and
we get to see other people every night taking a lot of joy from it.
Yeah,
so that's what keeps.
And every now and then you get a moment to sort of release the voice, and it's great fun.
Let rip.
But I think I don't think it would be the King Singers if we did that all the time, all together. I think there's something very special about singing for each other.
Awesome.
Okay, back to preparing the score properly. The singer's trump card. All right, so there's a few things that we wanted to touch on just before we wrap up.
Yeah.
This is sort of next level. Is this 103? Is this 103 or is this sort of 501? I mean, I don't know. This can be whatever you would like it to be, but this is uber geeky for some people. So switch off if this isn't for you. But I'm going to hand over to Pat for this, because some of this stuff is what he spent his degree doing. Mm-hmm. He had a really interesting degree. Okay, I don't know what to read out of that, but thank you, Bruiser. I think
if you are secure with the notes, you're secure with the language, you know what the text means, you've marked in your breathing, you've circled your octaves and fifths, you've done all this sort of really nice preparation before your rehearsal, you've still got 2 more days to go, you've got miraculously nothing to do for 2 days. Here's the next level of stuff you can do to really be inside the music before you get to performing it.
Dun, dun, dun. Drum roll, please.
What I like to do when I'm rarely in that position is to look out for compositional devices. You're probably going to be singing music by some masters, by Brahms, Beethoven, Bach, Bird, Tallis, all these amazing composers. Bruce is doing up his top button.
Yeah,
Get geeky.
I feel we need to. This is appropriate.
Okay. I raise you this. Actually, I can't breathe. So what I like to do is to honour these composers by trying to work out what they've done in the music to make it how it is. And if you can go into the rehearsal armed with a knowledge of the process by which the composer put the piece together, I think you're all more likely to perform it very well. And a large part of my degree at Cambridge was working out how analysing music academically, structurally, harmonically, can inform your way of performing it. And if, for example, you know that the whole piece for the first 3 minutes is leading up to a climactic key change or a chord or a modulation, something, you can really give your audience, you can tell them, you can let them listen out for that. So I think going through the score and seeing, harmonically, where is the composer going, where's he modulating to, what's the climax, and looking out for these things that the composer's done.
Do you know, one of the best examples of that, have you sung Ave per Spazio?
I sadly have not.
Okay, the whole thing revolves around basically A minor, A something minorish, basically, for the entire piece. Which lasts minutes, lots and lots of minutes, maybe close to an hour, and then the last page is in D major, and it's just this most extraordinary moment that you've been singing lots and lots of A stuff, and then boom, 1 page D, and it's thrilling.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be a reason why the text at that point in time encouraged the composer to set it completely different to the rest of the piece, and it has. I think you should look out for that, because they've decided, we hope, intentionally, to set certain moments or words in with certain harmonic progressions.
Yeah, totally.
And if you're aware of that, it makes it so much more interesting, because you can spoon feed that to the audience and say, hey, you've been listening to a whole lot of A minor, check this out, yeah? And you can really, really, really aid the performance by being aware of these things.
Totally. And we just talked a lot about looking harmonically at what the composer's doing. Also, a lot of good composers use motifs and sort of melodic themes that keep coming back through the piece. If you turn up to your rehearsal aware that at this point you're singing this theme, or that maybe the theme is slightly morphed into something, you change one note in the theme, which is, Beethoven does it a lot. You take a single theme, you repeat it, and then you just change one note, and the whole energy of the piece changes. If you're aware, when you turn to your rehearsal, that that's your moment, that you do this great thing to the structure of the piece, you're going to perform it better, not worse. So if you have the time and the inclination, look into this detail. There's so many good books on it. Well, when I say good, I mean detailed books on it. And another thing for me personally...
Can I ask you a question? Do you read these books as sort of bedtime reading, alongside Harry Potter and things?
Yes, my favourite two books to read at night at the moment are the GCHQ puzzle book of 2016, which is lots of codes and riddles that I like to try and crack, usually unsuccessfully, and a book by Dr. Nicholas Cook called An Introduction to Musical Analysis.
Well, I mean, if this is to help you fall asleep, then maybe it's doing what it's
doing the right thing.
It's doing what it's trying to.
It's doing the right thing.
Yeah. Okay.
One last next level thing for me, which I really wanted to get in before we wrap up, which we have to do soon because our beautiful hosts are making us dinner. It's ficta. So on this next level analysis,
501,
I don't know how much you guys are interested or know about early music, but if you're singing a piece of Renaissance music from anyone, from Josquin, Bird, Palestrina, Tallis, any of these guys, you may know that sometimes notes are sharpened or flattened depending on the context. And there are millions of debates and books, as interesting as what I've just mentioned, about all this stuff.
Really?
But I really like to go to rehearsal with some ideas about maybe this note wants to be sharpened. This is leading to this thing, and though the composer hasn't written it in the score, and thus your copy doesn't have it in, think, maybe, when I listen to that, I want that note to be doo, doo, rather than doo, doo, doo. Maybe that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And thus, go having thought about that, having listened to a recording and thinking, I don't like that. But given the repertoire, given that this is written in 1505, maybe it's legitimate to change it, and come with a suggestion for your director that maybe this is a piece of ficta that I would like to add.
Well, and it all comes back to the fact that music is to be performed and not necessarily just studied. I mean, we study it so that we can aid the performance. But there's no point in geeking out and having lots of arguments about these things if you're not going to just sing them. And I think that's so important. And all these things that we've been talking about today to help you prepare your score properly is so that you can come to the rehearsal and have these discussions.
Get your hands dirty in the rehearsal, because your conductor doesn't have to do so for you. You can
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make the rehearsals value-added moments rather than just note-bashing sessions.
Spoon feeding.
Yeah? There's a lot you can do at your desk at home to really, really, really maximise the time you spend together. Some of you probably see each other once a week. Some of you may see each other on a daily basis, and that's a real joy, isn't it? But it's not necessarily the most common form of rehearsal. It's generally maybe once or twice a week, and so you need to use that time really efficiently so that you can get more enjoyment out of the music. So see if any of these things are helpful. They'll be posted up on our Ensemble hub. You can connect to that through
kingsingers.com.
Okay.
And every month, just in case you guys are interested, every month we post new articles and videos on Ensemble Hub. We've just had one from Johnny about the art of programming a really great concert. There's all these sorts of things about things that we think about on a daily basis. We're always updating it, or as often as we can. And so go check it out. If you've got a choir, if you sing in a choir, go and see if there's anything there that's useful for you. And for those of you watching from South Africa, maybe we'll see you in the coming days. We've got a concert on Valentine's Day in Bloemfontein.
Lovely.
Which we can't wait for. And that's one of the rare concerts on this trip. We've got tickets left. So get online, computicket.co.za. And find your ticket there.
There you go.
Love to see you.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in, and we're going to leave you with a beautiful view over Johannesburg.
Who's the cameraman?
Okay, I'll do this. I'll hold it up. Here we go.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
How do we stop this thing?
Finish.